All right, gentlemen, let's tackle the common mistakes. And by the way, really quickly, as we start to break down the common mistakes that we see, we've been doing this for a long time. I mean, I got in the financial advisory space in 2004. That's 20 years ago. I've seen a lot. There's very rare do I come across a scenario where I'm like, ooh, I can't believe you're doing that. I have never seen that before. So when we break this down, don't think that you're the only one. Don't just start like shrinking as you're driving down the road and being fearful as you're on the treadmill that somebody's going to know that that was the mistake that you were making. We've all made these mistakes. The key is knowing what the mistake is and then understanding how to recognize it so that you can pivot, make an adjustment. Jamie, what's one of those common mistakes you see as you're spending time with clients?
I think one of the biggest common mistakes I see is, you mentioned we're going to talk about mistakes, rules, and the strategy, is misunderstanding the rules, right? Thinking that debt freedom equals financial freedom. I have some really good friends, personal story, I love them to death, make a great living, and they are all about paying down debt as fast as possible in case something bad were to happen in the future. It's a fear-driven motivation to get rid of debt, right? But does paying off debt actually equal financial freedom? And I think we'll uncover throughout the rest of this episode that that's not necessarily the case, right? And so I see people taking money that could be used for something else, aggressively paying down debt that may or may not be bad debt, which then limits any ability to do anything else other than live with less money than they could have if they weren't aggressively paying down debt.
Well, for you, Ern, what's
hold
the
on. Before you move on, Russ, I think there's a lot that's behind that statement, Jamie, that I feel like peel it back just a little bit further.
Yeah.
When you say debt freedom doesn't equal financial freedom, it sounds interesting. I just don't know that I follow exactly why that's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think the easiest way to think about it is you can never pay off the cost of living, right? There's always going to be expenses that come across our plate that we have to pay for. Even if you were to pay off your house, you're going to pay off all your cars, your credit card debt free. You still have utility bills. You still have to buy food. You still have to buy gas for those cars, pay insurance. There's always going to be monthly expenses that come across your plate. And so perfect example is, let's say, Joey, that you paid down your house as aggressively as possible and you owe $1 on your house, but you can't make that payment. Who owns that house?
The lender.
The lender, right?
100%.
And so you're taking every available dollar to try and aggressively pay off debt in case of an emergency. Well, what happens if that emergency hits before you get fully paid off?
I got to go somewhere else to get the money.
That's right. That's right.
Well, but Joey, in your world, being in the mortgage business for so many years, you know this is that unfortunately the bank is loving someone making all of those extra payments, aggressively paying down. Because for me, I see a huge common mistake is the extra payment, right? The extra payment, the payment that is not actually reducing my monthly expenses, but it's adding to my monthly expenses. Remember, the formula for financial freedom is easy. Passive income greater than our monthly expenses. So if I take the monthly expenses that I have currently and I increase them by making extra payments on the minimum amounts of my mortgage payment, my car payments, my student loan payments, whatever those things are, and I'm not actually eliminating the debt altogether, I'm only paying extra principal. What's happening, Joey? Am I getting closer to financial freedom or further away based upon that formula?
No, you're definitely further away because you haven't eliminated the monthly payment that you're trying to pay off. You've just, in a sense, doubled it, or whatever the number amount that you've added to it. You're just increasing that new liability. Now, it's optional, right? It's an optional payment, but you've essentially taken any of that free cash flow that you did have and you've given it up. If you can imagine, you said banks really love this. Well, why do banks love this? Because in the moment that those payments leave your hands and they go to the lender's hands, the lender can immediately put it to work. But you, as the borrower, gave up access and the use of that money for some future date. In some cases, and you pointed to my experience in the mortgage business, you know how many times in 11 years, I had somebody call me up and say, hey, by the way, Joey, I paid the thing off like 3 times, maybe in 11 years. And we're talking hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people that I had the direct, interaction with for their mortgage that actually paid it off. So you do the math. What did they do? They essentially gave up access that whole time, and the bank was just turning that money over and over and over again because they owned it at that point.
Ernie, let's give you a chance to weigh in here. What's a common mistake you see as someone's trying to determine, should I invest or pay off debt?
Yeah, I want to get down to from 30,000 feet to 10,000 to 1,000. I want to get on the 5-foot level and just share a fad that is in our world right now at this 5-foot level. Just practically speaking, here's a product, a decision that many people that I've talked with over the last year and a half, it seems, are falling for this. And it's the first position HELOC. Tell me more. It is
So speak in English for me, please.
Crazy. These strategies to pay off your house, that's the objective, pay less loan interest, and tie in this velocity banking strategy to all that. And as I'm considering this, and it's more and more prevalent in our world, I'm really realizing that for these folks who have no assets but have debt, they've got nothing. But if they use this strategy and they still have no assets, but they have no debt, they still have nothing.
Yeah.
And Joey, what you just described is how the bank is benefiting from capturing these dollars to be able to go do otherwise with them. Not to mention, not that I pretend to be able to predict the markets and where things are going, but we've seen interest rates go up pretty high over the last year. So for people who have gotten into replace their 30-year mortgage with this 30-year line of credit, variable interest rates, I've seen their interest rate go sky high. And so what are the chances that they're actually going to end up paying less in interest now than when they set out? It's just a terrible decision in light of the conversation we're having today. So I just want to bring up a fad. And if you're listening to this and you've done it, that's okay. You can maneuver past this. But if you're looking at this, please keep listening. Join our inner circle. Get with one of these coaches in our community and draw a straight line from where you are to financial freedom so that you don't end up with nothing.
And Russ, I want to piggyback with what Ernie's saying, because if you don't have a coach, this question is still very gray to you. When you have a coach helping you to outline the rules and the strategies to win, we're going to get into that in a minute, it just becomes easy. So our Ignite coaching, go to wealth.wallstreet.com/free call and engage in our Ignite coaching program. This takes care of itself. You have somebody literally there the whole time walking you through it. But the other mistake, before we move on, I know we have to get into the second big point. The other mistake as it relates to paying extra payments is not just the fact that you lose access, it's also the regret. Okay. And I'm going to talk about this based on one of our coaching clients that we engaged with. This was some years ago. They were a physician, had $400,000 worth of student loan debt. We've talked about the mortgage, right? You can apply this to cars, but just as specifically, I'm talking about applying this to a student loan because in my opinion, especially the higher up that student loan debt is, like if you're a physician, you have a lot. It's just part of what comes with the deal. In my opinion, it comes with the territory that you almost have given yourself a hedge or like a hurdle to building wealth. And it's as soon as I pay this student loan off, then I can start saving for retirement. Then I can start creating financial freedom, building wealth, whatever the case is. And I'm just going to tell you from the mouths of people that have done that and they understand our program, they go through our coaching, they say, oh my word, what have I done? Right? I paid extra for the first 5 to 10 years of my practice. to pay off this $400,000 in debt. And we said, look at the financial freedom formula for just a second. It's passive income greater than monthly expenses. So compare where you were when you had the student loan to where you are now without the student loan. What percentage are you to financial freedom? And I'm just going to throw out some just generic numbers. This is not his numbers, but let's just say his passive income was 0 to begin with, and his student loan debt and all monthly expenses, let's just say it was $15,000 a month. So at the time when he was paying extra on that student loan debt, his financial freedom score was 0%. He was 0% of the way to financial freedom. Well, let's say after he paid off the student loan debt, he had 0 in passive income and $10,000 in monthly expenses. I'm just giving you, for instance, how close is he to financial freedom? Still the same percentage, 0% of the way. But we started doing the math and said, what if instead of paying extra on the student loan, you had invested in just a turnkey piece of rental real estate each year for those 5 to 10 years? How much closer would you be to financial freedom? And it was sick. It was in the 20 to 30% range compared to starting at 0 from day one. And I'm just going to tell you, that's regret. That is the definition of regret. When you look back and say, if only I had been smarter about using that extra money to my benefit, it would no longer be a liability to me. It would have been an asset. And I just want to encourage you, if you start thinking of that student loan as the means to getting the job that you wouldn't have been able to get without it, now there's no urgency to pay it off. Because let's say I have a rental property, I'm okay to take on a mortgage on that rental property because I see it as an asset. It was the means to creating a cash flow. Well, if I, as a student, thinking about my future employment as the asset that's going to drive everything from that point forward, it's worth it for me to go into that debt to create that. Now I don't have the same urgency to pay it off. It's now the vehicle that's going to potentially get me to financial freedom even faster. So I know that's a lot, but man, this is such a game changer when you get your head around this right.
Well, we almost made the greatest mistake of them all, is only focusing on debt. Every comment up to this point has only been on debt. You almost all even address the fact that if we paid off all the debt, we would still be where?
0%.
0% to financial freedom. If financial freedom is defined by having more passive income than monthly expenses, then we can't make the greatest mistake of only focusing on debt. We've got to start talking about building passive income. So one of the mistakes I see is that we only focus on the debt. The second thing is when we start to buy or invest, we don't buy cash flowing assets, right? Like we get into a deal because someone else told us about the deal. It sounded good. And we never got to the point of where it produced cash flow. Hey, by the way, got this deal. We're going to do this fix and flip. It's going to be an awesome. And Jamie knows what he's doing. And you can invest 50 grand into this thing. I can invest 50 grand into this thing. And next thing you know, we've got 25 grand a piece. It's an amazing deal, right? We've all had that deal, haven't we? But when does the money come? It's not coming monthly. It's in some future date. That's not a way to define freedom because we can't count on it, right? We have these payments, as you said, Jamie. We can't pay off the cost of living. The cable bill's coming no matter what, right? The insurance bill's coming no matter what. The grocery bill's coming no matter what. I can't wait 6 months. I'll pay you in 6 months, guys. When this deal, Jamie flips this deal, I'm going to get the money. I'll got your back. That's not the way it can work. We have to make investments that produce passive income. So that means we have to know some rules. So I'm going to hold off on giving the rules yet because that's where we're going. So first thing, common mistakes. Let's talk about some rules. Jamie, I'll let you jump into the rules part. Give me a rule that we need to understand that we haven't already shared maybe prematurely here.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest rules that I see people misunderstand is the concept of interest saved versus interest earned or interest lost, potentially. And what I mean by that is typically when people are focused on debts, right, it's all about how much interest can I save by paying off this debt as soon as possible. What they're not thinking about is what am I giving up by spending this dollar to save it interest? What is the opportunity cost of not using that dollar to go invest in a passive income stream or a passive income investment? And thinking through, can I use that dollar more efficiently to go and earn interest that could more than cover the interest I was going to save by paying off this debt? And so one of the rules that I think about all the time is my dollar most valuable earning me interest over here, or is it most valuable paying off and saving interest over here? And I'll tell you that nearly 95% of the time, taking credit cards out of the equation, probably more than that, my dollar is more efficient earning interest to cover the interest I'm paying on any debt that I have.
So, so I'm repaying what you said. If I had $10,000 and I had an opportunity to invest it, or I had an opportunity to wipe out a debt, I should look at what is even better. I'm going to say this a little bit different. You said it because I think the interest rate sometimes is confusing, right? It's not really the rate that we're interested in. It's the volume that we're interested in.
Sure.
So if I take $10,000 and I can pay off a car payment and it frees up $350 a month, right? Then my monthly expenses went down by $350. If I also have an investment opportunity and I could take that $10,000 and I could turn it into $150 a month, it clearly explains what I should do with the money, right? In that example, it would be better to pay off the debt, right? I only freed up $150 or created $150 on the investment side. But if I reverse those transactions, if I freed up only $150 by paying off the debt, and I could earn $350 into perpetuity, or at least past the length of when the debt would have been, then now I'm using that asset to pay for the debt.
Correct.
And if you've read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, you start to hear in Cash Flow Quadrant, you start to hear him talking about allowing your assets to pay for your liabilities. That's an example of how that works. You need to understand those rules. Most of the time, we have not invested in ourselves to understand how an investment truly works. How do I find assets that produce 20, 25, 40, 50% cash on cash returns? Because for the average person, they just don't know that.
If you've listened to our show for any length of time, you've heard us talk about infinite banking and how we were able to use that concept to create over $50,000 a month in passive income. But it's just not that easy to figure out, how does this all connect into my own personal system?
Stallion, that's why we created the passive income operating system, bro. It shows you how to turn active income into passive income. It makes all the steps come together. If you would like to get access to it as a podcast listener, we've never given this away in public before, go to what'swhatwallstreet.com/PIOS. There was nothing worse than walking into class when you're in school and the teacher saying, pop quiz day. Why? Because you were unprepared. Are you unprepared though for financial freedom?
Don't be. Find out how close you are by taking our 30-second quiz at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/quiz.
Ernie, what's another rule that we need to understand?
I want to give two rules, and I'll do it quickly. I just did the math, and I realized I went through a course called Financial Peace University 15 years ago. And I think I remember the details. First of all, it had a big impact on me. And I think that's a lot of the reason that I do this now with you guys, is that was my introduction to this world. And there was a concept given of pursue debt, getting out of debt with gazelle intensity. And that stuck with me. And I sort of like the idea of gazelle intensity, in that if there's a lion and you're a prey, you should escape that lion with the intensity of a gazelle. And I like that. But I think the thing that I've come to learn is that we're confused as to what the lion is. We're taught that debt is the lion. And here's what I would say. Your lack of cash is the lion. The thing that threatens you the most is lack of access to cash. So here's the rule. Rule number one, do not pay down debt. You can pay off debt, but do not pay down debt. Because when you're paying it down, you are regularly giving away your access to cash so that somebody else can have access to that cash. Rather, keep the cash, store it up, save it. And if you want to pay off the debt, knock your socks off. If you want to invest in an asset, now you have the opportunity. Rule number 2, make the best use of the time. I also remember learning through that course that the idea was to both get out of debt and secure retirement for yourself. But make the best use of the time. There's the rule for you. We have, as best as adults, 60 years to be building wealth on average. Why in the world would we take the first 10, 15, 20 years of that time frame to be getting out of debt to then begin building wealth? Why would we shorten our time horizon on that? Why would we not create an integrated strategy where we can manage both of those things? Why so black and white? So rule number 2, make the best use of the time.
So good. Stallion, what's your
Man, I think a rule to this whole thing that is not popular, it's not fun, is you got to live within your means, right? In order for this whole thing to work, you have to have surplus. So when Ernie's talking about paying down extra debt or not, when we're talking about investing, it all comes with the ability to have more than what it is necessary to live. And there's some people that are stuck in that position, sometimes because they've chosen to increase lifestyle to equal their income. And they're dealing with Parkinson's disease. So that's not for the person that's making $50,000 a year. It's also for the person that's making $500,000 a year that they don't know how to put a governor on the spending. So they just can't create financial freedom, right? That is super important. And I see it all the time. But the other thing is sometimes when you're in that lower income tier, there's just a reality check that has to take place. And it says, I'm not going to be okay with just what someone else is willing to pay me. I'm going to go create value in the world that is going to increase my ability to earn. Because if I create enough value to the world, nobody can put a cap on how much they're willing to pay me, right? And so you have to have surplus. And like I said, in some cases, that's putting a governor on yourself. And in other cases, it's putting the accelerator on your ability to create value in the world so that you can have that surplus.
Ernie, since I am competitive and you gave 2 rules, I've got to give 3 rules. I think there's 3 rules that I can share here. I think there's a bunch of rules, but I'm going to limit it to 3. One is inflation. Most people don't even understand inflation, right? They see the symptom of inflation when they see the prices of things going up and they go, oh, that's inflation. Well, that's a symptom, right? Inflation is the increase in the money supply. Well, we can understand that that's the actual thing, but we can't do anything about that, right? At least I can. If you can, let me know. We can have a conversation. I'd love to be a part of that discussion of how we can reduce the money supply. And I don't mean just burning dollars. Outside of the Social Security checks, you guys want to start lighting this thing on fire? Let's do it. I'm all for it. But inflation is one of those things that can be used in our favor if we understand long-term fixed debt. And that's what you guys were saying. Because the debt is, if it's fixed, and I'm making a payment $1,000 every single month for the next 30 years, what I know is that inflation will depreciate the value of the dollar that I'm using to pay off that debt. Meaning that in 20 years, 30 years down the road, the dollar that I have to use to pay for that debt is worth a lot less. So one of the rules is keep valuable dollars in your hands and in your pockets today and pay off debt with worthless dollars that are worth less in the future. Rule number 1. Secondly, Ernie, you kind of alluded to this, but the idea of the golden rule. This is the financial golden rule. Those who control the gold make the rules. Too oftentimes we give our money away to others where we don't have access to it. You gave the example there, Ernie, of, hey, the number 1 obstacle to becoming financially free is what?
Lack of access to cash.
Right. Most people have given that money away, have taken the right that they possessed as an investor, as someone who has the money and given it to someone else, and that money is no longer accessible to them. And so opportunities pass them by and they no longer are able to know what to do with the money. So keeping access to the money, knowing where you're putting it, allows you to control the gold, which leads us into the third rule that I have for you, is that no good or bad investments. They're just good or bad investors. So one of the rules that we need to understand is that there's no good or bad investments. Let's don't put all our hope in investments. We need to be investing in ourselves. The better the investor we are, the better the decisions we can make, the better the outcomes we will have. People talk about risk in investing. Oh, Russ, that's risky. Why is one thing risky for you and not risky for another? Is it possible that you know less about it and have less ability to influence its outcome? For us, if we want to reduce risk, we need to get closer to the deal, have more understanding of the opportunity at hand, and also be able to potentially influence its outcome. Those are 3 rules in addition to all the amazing ones that you have. All right, let's move to the third step. So we've hit some common mistakes. We talked about how to play the game. Let's talk about how to win the game. Jamie, give me a strategy. How can I win the game?
Russ, you took the words right out of my mouth of what I had in my mind, and I don't think that quick on my feet, but I think you hit the nail on the head. The first how to win the game is you have to invest in yourself. You have to invest in the education or the foundation to understand even what's going on, right? Back to the beginning of the conversation, we know what's going on, we know what to do. How do you learn what's going on? You invest your time or potentially your money and resources into yourself to learn the rules, the strategy, and what is happening in the world. So think back to my journey in real estate, trial by fire. I spent 6-9 months just learning how to invest in real estate, learning the market, learning what was happening in Birmingham, connecting with people that were already doing it. It was an investment of my time, my money, and my effort into learning how to do real estate. I think that is the very first strategy that we need to be thinking about, is building that foundational education, which starts with us and investing in ourselves.
Well, I'm sorry that I stole something from you, man. I did know, but knowing from one rainmaker to another, it makes sense.
Hey, it was a great conversation, great idea. I mean,
I want to tack on to what you guys are talking about, though. We're looking at the 2 sides of the financial freedom formula in this question. Should I invest or should I pay off the debt? And I'm willing to tell you, if you don't heed the advice that both Russ and Jamie are talking about, investing in yourself, you will never even consider the invest side of that formula because it's too risky, right? And maybe this is where you're at right now. Like you're thinking, man, I've always focused on paying off debt because what else would I do? All I know is I put money in a 401k or an IRA, and maybe somebody could invest in real estate. I bought a home before, so that it kind of becomes familiar, like, oh, maybe I could buy one to rent. But beyond that, your brain has been locked off of the idea of investing in anything else. And so, first of all, hats off to you that you're even on this podcast, so that you're being exposed. You're getting a baseline education in a lot of different strategies, right? That's our job, is to bring those things to you so that unlocks that part of your brain a little bit. And you're like, whoa, never considered laundromats, never considered short-term rentals, never considered land flipping. Like, those are all things that just not everyday people are talking about. But man, if you can never win the game if you're not able to invest. And you're never going to invest if you don't have a baseline understanding and confidence in that. And I'm willing to tell you that the people in our mastermind are absolutely borrowing that confidence from the number of investors that are on each of those calls, giving them their feedback. And they're learning like really, really quickly what sometimes people will take decades to learn. But I'm gonna. So I just tacked that onto you. So don't kick me out here yet, Russ. The other part I want to say is the strategy behind the game is just like, have you ever played the game Cash Flow?
Yes.
Okay. How many times have you ever been playing the game Cash Flow that someone won by paying the debt that was in their scenario.
Meaning that all they did was try to pay off the debts on their card?
Exactly.
Yeah, no. I mean, you may see, maybe you'll get out of the rat race when you've at the very end because you have all the money in the world and you've built up all the passive income, and now just one deal, you pay off the debt, but never as the ultimate strategy.
Well, if that was the only thing you focused on, right? If all you did was focus on debt, you never created passive income, it's impossible to get out of the rat race. And it's because of stuff you said before, Jamie. You can't pay off the cost of living, and those things are always going to be on your scorecard. So I just think strategy, knowing how to play the game. Oh, I can buy the big deal. I can buy the small deal. I can pay off the debt. Those are the rules. But the strategy is you got to be focused on that investment side.
Earth, give me some strategy. How do I win the game?
Well, I want to focus on that cash flow game just real quick. Great game. Do you know what the worst part of that game is?
That you don't, that they have stocks involved in it.
That's pretty bad. That's up there. If this was, if I was Steve Harvey, that'd be on the board. The worst part of the game is how I react when I land on that one that says you're having another child.
Yes.
And my reaction to that is the worst. Just the worst. Nobody celebrates when they find out they're having another baby in the cash flow game. Anyways, if you know, you know. Strategy. How do you win the game? Should I pay off debt or should I invest? And the answer is yes. Here's what I mean. How you win the game is you build assets that create cash flow where other people are paying you and they pay your debt for you. Build income streams that pays for your debt. That's how you win this game. What do I mean? Well, just quick story. When I got into this world, all I knew was what everybody else knew. But I was given this book called Become Your Own Banker by Russ the very first day that I came into this world. Read it over the first week, understood way less than I should have, had lots of conversation, started implementing that strategy with a view that let me store up some cash. When I build up enough in this insurance policy, I'll use that to go pay off my student loans. So at least I had that right. I wasn't making extra payments on the student loans, but I was focused on getting rid of those, get rid of that stinking $405 a month payment. But then, Joey, what you're talking about, I was living in this world, getting exposure to what you guys were doing, what our community members were doing, what we're talking about on this podcast. And I realized, I can invest with this money that I have and buy some real estate, and I can create a land business. And now my tenants and now the people who are paying me for the land that we've sold them, they pay me to cover those mortgages, to cover my mortgage, to cover those student loans, to cover our car payments. They pay down my debt and I create the income stream. That's how you win the game.
Man, I think you're probably right. I said, last time there was 3 rules. I think I got like 10 strategies here, and I don't have time. I know we don't have time for this. And you
don't, Russ.
That's so stinking dumb. All right, so one of the things I'm gonna throw in a strategy that you shared there, Ernie, just at the end, and this is a free one. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com, go to the podcast and type in Scott Todd. Or if you're in the podcast app, look up Everything is on Sale with Scott Todd. If you want to know what Ernie just said, how to play the game, what's the strategy to buying assets and having the assets pay for the liabilities? That episode we did with Scott Todd, where he said everything is on sale. His brain sees everything on sale. If he says, hey, I want to buy this new car, it's $50,000, to buy this new airplane, it's $1 million, and the payment for it is X, then all I need to do is figure out how my investments, how much money do I have to put in investments to create that amount of cash flow to pay for it? And most of the time, he's doing it at 1/5, 1/6, 1/7 of what it costs to invest to create the cash flow as compared to what the actual asset costs. So that's one of the strategies I'll give you as a freebie there. Another one, when you're trying to figure out which debts to pay off, let me give you a strategy. We, in our community, use a tool called the Priority Payoff Guide. And if you know that you can take the debt that you have, right? Let's just say you have a car and it's $50,000 and it's got a $500 car payment, right? You can determine if that car payment is really a risk to you. Should it be one that you should prioritize? And our priority payoff guide actually shows you, if you take the debt amount, the $50,000, and divide it into the payment amount, it's going to give you a score. So like 50,000 divided by 500 gives you a score of 100. And so on this tool, it'll tell you from 0 to 50, these are danger zones. These are things that you need to really try to focus on getting rid of. If it's between 50 and 100, mid, as the teams
Mid, as they say.
From 100, if the score is 100 to 300, those are freedom zone debts. Those are debts that I'm not going to try to work on, but I got nothing else to do, right? I got so much cash, I'm just moving out of the rat race, Joey, like I did in the cash flow game a couple of times. I pay off the debt at the very end because it just frees that up, and I have it, all right? Makes me feel good. But just take the debt amount that you have, divide it by the payment, and know if it's in that 0 to 50 column, and I'm not saying the payment that you're making, I'm saying the payment that's required, right? Because a lot of times we make extra payments. Let that be the danger zone things that you get. That's one strategy. Next strategy is the investor DNA. Talking about needing to know who you are as an investor, the way that we know how to invest and how to invest well is first we need to know who we are as an investor. And when we know who we are as an investor, then we know the best strategies that align with who we are so we can get the most out of them. When I was investing in single family rental properties, I was not having that much success. And it was not because single family rental properties is a bad idea. It just did not match up with my investor DNA. I could go on and on. Man, let's find tax efficient strategies. Let's look for opportunities to arbitrage deals. Let's look how to buy things with creative financing. Let's look for ways to use other people's money. Let's look how to get in deals with nobody. Just use experience that I've created. There's so many strategies. But if you want all those strategies, you want to figure out how they apply to you, go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/free call. Share what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to become financially free and you haven't gotten there yet, but you need help. You need to be around other people that are peers that are on that same path, but maybe you need a mentor. Maybe you need to see a hero from time to time. That some of these people that come in and teach inside of our inner circle and in our live events and inside of our masterminds. That's how you get access. Let this be the year that you take action so that you become financially free. Coaches, Joey, thank you so much for sharing wisdom. Thank you for listening. Hope you found value. If this was something that you thought was super valuable, please take a picture just somewhere. Tag us in social. I promise this is the kind of stuff that we want to keep delivering on, but only way we know if this is really helpful to you is when we get to kind of be tagged and say, oh, that was the thing. Let's make more of that specific thing. Have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.